An SAP source system is created in the data warehousing workbench. The data is extracted from the SAP source system and updated using a data source. The client in an SAP component is always connected as a source system in SAP BW. The following selection options are available when you create a source system for SAP BW. SAP Systems. When you select Automatic Creation, the required RFC connections are generated at the same time. Recommended. If you choose to create the source system manually, you have to create the RFC connections between the SAP BW system and the SAP source system first. SAP BW Systems. Dummy for SAP System or SAP Business Information Warehouse. This option is mostly intended for testing and transports. Business Objects Data Services. This option uses the staging BAPI connector to SAP BW and provides tight integration with the SAP data flow concept. Flat File System. Flat files for which metadata is maintained manually in SAP BW and data is transferred to SAP BW using a file interface. Database System. Database Management Systems or DBMS, into which data is loaded from a database supported by SAP using DB Connect without using an external extraction program. SAP UDC or Universal Data Connector System. Relational or multi-dimensional sources that are connected to SAP BW using UD Connect. Web Service System. Web services that transfer data to SAP BW by means of a push. External system. Non-SAP systems for which data and metadata is transferred using staging BAPIs.
You can define source systems in the data warehousing workbench in the source system tree. To define a source system, choose Create from the context menu of the folder in the source system type. SAP BW is a data warehouse solution, and as it is closely linked in a network to other systems. Usually, there are several source systems connected to an SAP BW system, but the SAP BW system itself can also act as a source system to another SAP BW system. In this case, the term data marts is used. Since modifications to a system that is part of a source system or SAP BW connection have an impact on all the connected systems, they cannot be treated in isolation.
You use transaction SM59 to maintain RFC connections. RFC connections are based on ALE technology. ALE is a technology for the construction and operation of distributed applications. It enables the efficient and controlled exchange of messages and keeps data consistent in loosely connected SAP application systems. The applications are integrated using synchronous and asynchronous communication rather than a central database. RFC connections are created based on the logical system name. This allows a client to be uniquely identified in an SAP system landscape.
The SAP BW Service API SAP I is a technology package in the SAP source system that enables tight integration of data transfer from SAP source systems to the SAP BW system. The SAP I supports SAP application extractors for data transfer into SAP BW, generic data extraction, delta processes, and data access in the source system directly from SAP BW virtual providers. The SAP BW Service API is based exclusively on SAP technology and is used at various points within the SAP BW architecture.
With Transaction SBIW, the SAP I provides an implementation guide in the SAP source system that includes the activities necessary for data extraction and data transfer from an SAP source system into SAP BW.
You can maintain control parameters for data transfer in Transaction SBIW in the General Settings area. The parameters that you maintain here are valid as global standard values and thus apply to all data sources. However, for performance reasons, there are BI content data sources with extractors that make their own settings. The individual parameters are described in the following list.
There are three types of virtual providers as follows.
Based on extensive knowledge and experience in a broad range of business and industrial applications, SAP BI Content offers customers pre-configured role-based information models for analysis, reporting, and planning. BI Content provides the relevant SAP BW objects for selected roles within a company, from extraction to analysis, in an understandable, consistent model. BI Content therefore provides an efficient and cost-effective way to implement SAP BW. BI Content is delivered by SAP and can be used either directly or as a template to be adapted to customer needs. BI content also contains sample data like demo content that can be used for testing and demonstrations.
BI content objects are grouped in different areas to enable you to use them in the best possible way. The following list outlines a selection of these areas.
The figure shows the object versions and how the versions are used in the delivery process. After you have installed the BI content as an add-on component in the SAP BW system, all the SAP BI content objects are available to you in the D, that is, delivered version. To work with these objects, transfer them from the BI content. When you transfer BI content objects, the contents of the D version are copied and transferred to an M, that is modified, and A, that is active version, and corresponding objects are generated in the ABAP dictionary and programs. The D version is not deleted after the transfer. This means that the contents can be transferred more than once, and transferred BI content objects can be changed or deleted without affecting the D version. If an activated BI content object is changed to adapt it to a customer's specific requirements, a new M, that is modified version, is generated. You can then activate this version, whereupon it overwrites the older active version. Only objects that have been saved as A versions are exported from the development system. When they are imported into the target system, these objects are imported either directly into the A version or into an M version, depending on the object type. The transfer process is performed in the BI content function area of the data warehousing workbench. In the navigation window to the left, in the figure, choose one of the following selection levels: Info Providers by Info Areas, Info Objects by Application Components, Info Sources by Application Components, Roles, Object Types, Objects in SAP BW Patch, Transport Request, Packages. When you have chosen the selection level, the corresponding BI content objects are displayed in the navigation window in the middle, in the figure.
Before you select the objects to be activated in the middle navigation window, you can choose the grouping method from the grouping selection list. With the grouping method, you determine the dependent objects to be additionally included when activating the BI content objects. The following options are available. Before you activate the collected objects in the Collected Objects navigation window on the right, check the following columns in this window.
The BI content for SAP ECC and SAP Source Systems is a plugin component that creates the technical preconditions for the extraction. With SAP BW systems, these systems can also be connected as source systems to another SAP BW system. The BI content is a fixed component in the system and does not have to be installed later by means of plugins. The data sources delivered with SAP BI content and data sources delivered by partners are included in the D version that is delivered. To work with these data sources, you have to transfer them from the BI content. When you perform the transfer, the contents of the D version are copied and transferred to an A version that is active. The corresponding structures, tables and programs used for the extraction are generated by the system. After the transfer has taken place, you can adapt the data sources, that is, enhance the extraction structure, for example. This is possible since it is not the D version of the data sources but the A version derived from them that is changed. The transfer is made with transaction SBIW in the SAP source system. The process is divided into two parts: the transfer of application component hierarchy and the transfer of the data sources.
Data sources can be transferred selectively in one of two ways as follows: to transfer and activate a data source delivered by SAP with BI content in transaction SBIW in the source system. Choose Data Transfer to the Business Information Warehouse, Business Content Data Sources, Transfer Business Content Data Sources. When activating BI content in SAP BW, you can also activate data sources remotely from the SAP BW system. This activation is subject to an authorization check. You need role SAP_RO_BCTRA. Authorization object S_RO_BCTRA is checked. The authorization is valid for all data sources of a source system. Caution: remote activation is not supported in source systems or in SAP BW systems with an SAP BW Service API release lower than SAP NetWeaver 7.0, delivered with BI_basis 2005.1. In this case, you have to activate the data sources in the source system manually and then replicate them to the SAP BW system. Over time, changes in the ECC, FIGL, or Financial Accounting General Ledger source tables and improvements in SAP BW technology have resulted in separate BW content offerings with differing degrees of sophistication in the area of finance. The best example of this comes in the area of general ledger analysis.
Generation of BI content to support the new GL is implemented in our training system and is quite powerful. Improvements in extraction and other technologies in the last few years have made newer, even more sophisticated BI content available for installation. This more sophisticated BI content in support of the new GL-based data schema is called Reporting Financials EHP3 and has been available since BI content version 7.05. A requirement to utilize this content includes extraction and other software only available on ECC systems updated to EHP3 with the business function Reporting Financials activated. The figure shows the options available for GL reporting.
The details of the delivered BW content for the FIGL, that is, new scenario, is shown in the figure. The web version of this can be found using the help.sap.com menu path in the figure. Note that you can achieve real-time reporting of GL data using the FIGL_R10 info provider.
The details of the delivered BI content for the reporting financials EHP3 scenario is shown in the following two figures. The web version of this can be found using the help.sap.com menu path in the first figure. As you can see from these two figures, the content is much more elaborate and includes many more queries, virtual cubes and DSOs. This content is not dependent on the previous content except that they are underlying master data, as the source for each scenario is different. The figure continues the very robust BI content in support of FIGL. Similarly, robust BI content is available for other FI areas such as accounts payable and receivable.
The process for installing business content in FIGL is similar to other content areas. The basic steps for doing so are identified in the figure. The main difference identified in the figure is the need to use the switch framework as a prerequisite for the reporting financials EHP3 scenario.
The use of best practice guides for configuring ECC business processes has been a standard technique used by consultants for many years now. Less used or known about are the guides to help you with BW.
The best practice guide recommends activating the info objects and their catalogs, then breaking up the info providers into smaller groups. This makes debugging easier.
You can open the tools for generic data extraction using the Business Information Warehouse Implementation Guide in the SAP source system, that is, Transaction SBIW. In the Generic Data Sources area, you will find the transaction Maintain Generic Data Sources, that is, Transaction RSO2. You can use this transaction to create data sources for transaction data, master data, and for texts.
When you create a generic data source, you first have to enter the application component and texts for describing the data source. Definition of the application component determines where the data source metadata is stored after replication of the data sources in the data source tree of the corresponding source system in the data warehousing workbench. You can then select the data source for the generic data source. Here, you can choose both transparent tables and database views. You can also use SAP Query or InfoSet Query to extract data. Choose the Extraction from View button if you want to extract the data from a transparent table or database view, and enter the name of the table or view. The extraction structure of the generated data source is then identical to that of the view or table. Choose the Extraction from Query button if you want to use an SAP Query InfoSet as a data source. Then select the required InfoSet from the InfoSet catalog. You can go to the screen for maintaining an existing InfoSet by double-clicking its name.
You create views with transaction SE11, that is ABAP Workbench Dictionary. The view type database view must be selected when creating the view. The tables must be joined by identical fields in the join conditions. All of the key fields in the tables must be defined as view fields. Otherwise, some data records may overlap and the data will not be transferred to SAP Business Warehouse. Characteristics can be ignored if you're certain that they are not used in the table keys. If characteristics with only one attribute are used, they can be assigned selection conditions, that is, go to selection conditions. If the master data is time dependent, the date to and date from fields have to be included in the view. SAP Query or InfoSet Query is a powerful tool for defining reports in SAP source systems and supports different forms of reporting. It allows users to define and execute their own reports on data in the SAP system without any knowledge of the ABAP programming language. Reports are structured by entering texts and selecting fields and options in SAP Query. The relevant fields can be selected more easily using info sets, known as functional areas before release 4.6c. Info sets are viewed as data sources. These data sources can be used for extracting into SAP BW. The process for creating an info set from the data source definition is as follows. Fill out all of the required entry fields, that is, application component descriptions. Choose extraction from query. Choose Save. A new screen is displayed. Assign a name for your info set and choose Info Set Maintenance. In the screen that follows, choose Create Again. Select the data source, DB tables or views, joins, logical DB. Define the field groups and assign the fields.
As of release 4.6c, a functional area is called an info set. An info set is a special view of a data set, that is, logical database, table join, table, sequential file, and is used by SAP Query as a data source. Info sets, therefore, determine the tables or fields in these tables that can be referenced by a report. In most cases, info sets are based on logical databases. SAP Query features a component for maintaining info sets. When you create an info set, a data source in an application system is selected. SAP Query is relevant for the business information warehouse because it allows you to define the extract structure by selecting fields in a logical database, table join, or other data sets in the form of an info set. In this way, you can use the generic data extraction function for master or transaction data from any info set. When you do so, a query is created for an info set that retrieves data and transfers it to the generic extractor. A template is provided with which you can extract data with the function module. The data has to be copied from the function module to an interface table e_t_data.
There can be various reasons why the BI content delivered by SAP does not contain sufficient information. It may be that you are not working with the SAP standard in the source system and you have to modify the data extraction. Thus, it is absolutely necessary that the additional data is available at the time of extraction and that all required keys for reading the additional data are part of the original data.
In both the master data and in the extraction of transaction data, it may be necessary to enhance the data to be extracted with new information. Some application areas or information systems such as the LIS or COPA allow you to enhance characteristics that are not contained in the documents by means of enhancements or other methods. These types of characteristics are also determined when a document is posted. If the data should or must be enhanced at the time of SAP BW data extraction, this has to be done by enhancing the data source. Customer exits are generally used for the actual enhancement of the data. Customer exits are used to branch to predefined points from the SAP standard program run in user-defined sub-programs. This enhances the standard functioning with the customer's own requirements. This gives SAP software the highest possible flexibility. The user-defined codes are managed as isolated objects in the customer namespace, so there is no chance of complications with the next release or when correction statuses are implemented. In the example in the figure, the section between the dotted lines describes what data the user code can use for its logic and what the SAP code expects to receive back from the customer's logic.
If your requirements are not covered by the data sources supplied with BI content, you can obtain additional information in a routine by developing your own program and integrating it in a function enhancement. To integrate a program in a function enhancement, complete the following steps. Define the required fields in an append structure that is appended to the extract structure of your data source. Write your function exit to call up the relevant data sources for your data source. Replicate the data source in SAP BW. Extract the data for your enhanced data source. Note, beforehand, check whether it might be less work to create a new generic data source instead of enhancing an existing one.
To enhance the extraction structure in customizing in the source system, that is, transaction SBIW, choose Business Information Warehouse, post-processing of data sources, edit data sources and application component hierarchy. You have to generate the customer append for the extract structure of your data sources. When you do so, the system proposes a name starting with ZA followed by the name of the extraction structure. Maintain the fields that you want to enhance later. All of these fields should start with ZZ as a way of identifying their special purpose. Finally, generate your append structure. Caution: the extraction structure from the LO cockpit cannot be enhanced by using the function enhancement provided by the Service API. Alternatively, these data sources can be enhanced by either assigning additional fields from the corresponding LIS communication structures to the standard extraction structure or by using the enhancement options provided by the LIS communication structures.
You must define the function enhancement for filling the new fields in the extraction structure. You have to create a project before you can use an enhancement like this. You can then integrate one or more enhancements into this project. For our task, SAP provides the enhancement RSAP 0001. Remember that an enhancement cannot be used in two projects simultaneously. There are 4 different enhancement components that can be used for enhancement RSAP 0001. They contain the code for filling the extraction structure. The components are as follows: exit underscore SAP LRSAP underscore 001 transaction data supply, exit underscore SAP LRSAP underscore 002 master data and text supply, exit underscore SAP LRSAP underscore 003 texts supply, exit underscore SAP LRSAP